You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Good morning, dear listeners. Welcome to Achtung Millwall. My name is Nick Hart. Joining me at the end of what feels like a bit of a momentous week in Millwall history is our very own Millwall historian, custodian of the books. It's Mr. Neil Fissler. How are you, mate?
Not too bad, Nick. Not too bad. Another tumultuous week in Millwall history, as if we haven't had enough of them recently.
That's all we ever do. It feels like it's been a momentous week, Neil, and I don't know if I'm overcooking it, mate. It was one of the first things I wanted to get your view on, really, because it's been a week where obviously we've heard from Joe Edwards, a fairly long 27 minute video on the club's site, which has been quite an interesting conversation, quite a nice video. We'll come back to that in a moment, but also another video with our new chairman, Jimmy Berylson. Again, not as long, but equally as interesting and insightful into him as a man. And finally, a long read from Steve Kavanagh, chief exec, on the club website with various elements, a lot in that as well. So we've got quite a bit to chew over on this show, Neil, you and me.
And you're also missing Alex Aldridge speaks.
Yes, he has. Yes, our new director of football. He speaks. That's right. He's certainly acquired a public profile in an official capacity. He always had a public profile in the past, but now he is speaking as Millwall's director of football. So yes, it feels like a week of change somehow, Neil. Do you see it that way?
What a week to be alive if you're a Millwall fan. And what a week to be a podcaster. Because for once, there is plenty.
Yes, there is.
And plenty for us to mull over. Yeah, I know that we put these shows out semi-regularly. Yeah, but they were regularly. But it was just getting to a stage, I think, where we were just discussing the same stuff week in, week out and trying to put another slant on it. Okay, at Millwall, that probably happens quite a lot. Yeah. Yeah, are we going to get rid of Gary Rowett? Rowett ball is his football shit and all of this lot, yeah? But for once,
we've got some meat. We've got some meat in our sandwich. Sometimes, I'll confess to you, listeners, as Neil's put it so well there, we were scratching out a bit of a show sometimes, weren't we?
Yeah, well, sometimes, we were looking at each other because we do this on StreamYard for those people who don't know. And we'd kind of get to half an hour. And you would feel as if the conversation is starting to run aground, and then we'd eke another 25, 30 minutes out of it, and we'd come off and how the hell did we do that?
How do we do it? Just for your entertainment, dear listeners. I must admit, there's nothing to match the sense of dying on your feet about, a short way into a podcast where you think you're going to do 50 minutes and you find yourself dying for something to say after 20. Before we get into the meat of the sandwich, Neil, we must cover our pundit games question. I like to try and get this in every show. It's a terrific board game. We are partnered up with Pundit Games this season, listeners. Every sale of this board game, football quiz game, helps benefit the Lions Food Hub, which is the point and purpose of us doing the show fundamentally. And we try and tease you to buy a quiz game for the football head in your life each show by giving you a little taster question of the kind of genres and subject matters that you can find in it. So you answer 5 questions, score a goal, and play for a certain period of time, defeat your opponent. So I've got a little teaser question answer at the end of today's show once we've got through our fairly extensive agenda today. This is an English national team question. I think it's fairly straightforward for any gentleman of a certain age, Neil.
Thank God. Starting to. Yeah, as soon as you mentioned England's team, my heart dropped.
Well, this is from an era where I think most of our listeners will remember that, not like the Southgate era, perhaps anyway, an English national team. As they put it, he's the most decorated Englishman in domestic football abroad. So he's won his medals abroad, listeners. He's a midfielder. He never reached his full potential for the national side. He had a good Euro 96. It was followed by a bit part World Cup 1998 in France. But his Euro 2000 tournament was cut short, sadly, due to injury. I think as soon as I read out the clubs, you're going to get it, listeners. 1990 to 1999, Liverpool, 272 appearances, 46 goals for the Scousers. Real Madrid, 1999-2003, which is where he would have won his medals, of course, not at Liverpool. 94 appearances, 8 goals for the Galacticos, if they still were that then. And I've forgotten he played for Manchester City, 2003 to 5, 35 appearances for Man City. And 37 caps for his country, England, and 3 goals, 1994 to 2001. Answer, if you haven't got it already, listeners, at the end of today's show. So if you know it already, then you can probably switch off now if you don't want to listen to the rest of Neil and I rabbiting away about this momentous week. Now, let's start off with the Joe Edwards Revolution. That's what I'm going to call it now. I'm going to call it the Joe Edwards Revolution. Really interesting video on the club website. I know you've had a chance to have a quick look at it. Now, I've watched the whole spiel. He speaks well, this guy, doesn't he? He's a young guy, and he's clearly versed in modern football. He comes over very, very well, I think. How did you see him?
First mistake, I think, was the club putting it behind a paywall, which I think they quickly recognised was a mistake and they rectified it.
Yeah.
I think in this situation, you want to get the message out to the masses as quickly as you can. We don't have wall-to-wall coverage of Millwall on woke sports news or any other platform. So I think it was quite important that they got the message out. They recognised that they got it wrong. I can see why they did it.
Yeah,
they want to drive people to Millwall Plus.
The Millwall TV Plus.
Yeah. And I can see why they did it. But when you're not getting wall-to-wall media, you want to generate as much coverage of something this positive as you can. And they...
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they rectified it. I think that's...
To be fair, hands up in the air. They admitted it immediately. They rectified it immediately. So that's not...
Fair play.
Yeah, pretty much. What did I make to his interview? He speaks well, as you said. Very impressed that it wasn't word salad, phrase salad, whatever you want to call it, coach speak. He said he spoke in a language that I wasn't bored after 30 seconds. And you can see that he's got a great football knowledge. You can see that immediately. I think he's one of these new breed of people that he's decided to make his career coaching, and he's made that quite early on. And that comes through. In many ways, like I decided I want to be a journalist, you decided you maybe wanted to work in housing or whatever you did before that. He has decided, okay, I'm not going to reach the top in football as a player, so I want to be a coach. Single-minded determination as to become a coach. And that comes through. He speaks well. He's obviously had a little bit of media training probably at Chelsea. That comes through. But he's very different to Gary Rowett.
He is.
In many respects. I liked what I had to hear. I've got to be honest. I listened to it. In fact, I should actually have listened to it earlier in the week. But I've been busy with 1-2 books that you might have heard.
Well, we may be mentioning those books later on in this very show.
So I've been busy trying to get 1 or 2 more of them out. So I completely forgot to listen to it. So I watched, I think, the first 20 minutes of it.
Yeah, it's a 27 minute, 26.
But he speaks well. He comes across well. And if he coaches as well, I think we've done all right here. There was a few points that we'll obviously come on to talk about, and the key point is I think he was headhunted. From what he said, in his interview, he said that Alex Aldridge phoned him. Which,
yeah, I picked up on that.
Yeah, which I found very, very interesting. So he was somebody that the club obviously thought could do a job. He wasn't coming to the club and saying, begging for the job. The club I was actually impressed with the proactiveness of Alex Aldridge, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that stood out. A couple of things stood out for me. One is his communication skills, which is a hackneyed phrase. You hear it in all walks of life now, but you certainly know it by someone who's got it and someone when they're going through the motions. And as much as Gary Rowett was also media trained, he's now doing turns for Sky Sports and did before us, and will carry on doing so. But I found some of his stuff a little bit repetitive and, as you put it, rather not jargon feel, but cliched rather.
Journey and things like it.
You start to hear it over and over. Now we may yet have a time to get a little bit tired of Joe Edwards's. We all have our cliches, listeners, even me, if you can believe that. But no, I thought, first thing with any coach, manager, whatever title you want to give them, Neil, is I asked myself, would I follow this bloke? Would I, if I was in his team, and that can go for any walk of life, but football is our sport here, would I follow him? And so this is an instinctive gut answer. Many's the time, and I've met Holloway, and I remember one of the first things that crossed my mind when I met him physically was, I wouldn't trust you an inch. Would I follow you into the so-called trenches to give an image? And you probably wouldn't there, but with Joe, he gives you every sense that he is somebody that you would listen to, and that's important for me. Because you want to feel like you are going to learn something and you're going to develop and improve, and that's been very much his unique selling point, so to speak. The other thing that really stood out is the point you've just made about how we've clearly gone to him. He makes the point that he was working for the English team, the under 20s, I think it was, and he was happy there. So he had no need, he had no desire particularly to go into regular club management. But we've clearly gone to him with Millwall as a prospect project. Clearly, there's a desire in the club to change where we are at the moment, and we've made the point a few times, Neil, on this show. And I'm thinking back most recently to games at Watford and Southampton last Saturday, where we're just giving the ball back to the opponents who hold it for long periods of time, and then we get the ball, we don't use it right, and we give it straight back to the yellow shirt, the red shirt, whatever it may be. That's got to change. And I think the reason that Joe's come in is with that in mind, and to take the squad as it is at the moment and work with it. We can make gradual changes, but we've got to somehow get our players more comfortable with the football. And I was really quite intrigued by that idea, because it's been something we've been crying out for. It's been a clear need at the club for a long time now, increasingly this season. And at last, it's refreshing to hear somebody talking that way, because that's the only way we're going to progress in this division. If we're going to survive here, we've got to learn how to play that way.
Yeah, he said. Yeah, but a couple of things that struck me was he said, "My football will be different to Gary Rowett."
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be as defensive orientated. Yeah. I think
that's music. Should be music to all of our ears, shouldn't it?
I think that we always thought that Rowett set up not to lose as opposed to win. I know it sounds funny, but he says, I want to be proactive and on the front foot with the ball, creating numerous chances. That to me is like football pornography, that, isn't it?
The only fans of football.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are. Yeah, that's quite right, actually. I wish I thought of that one. Millwall.
You can have it. You can have it. Put it in one of your pieces, mate. Have it.
When Millwall are going to come. Millwall are going to become the only fans of football. Superb. I think that's what we've been crying out for. That's what we've wanted. I
Absolutely,
think he worked
absolutely.
with the England under-18 team, the team that Romain Eze's in.
Yeah,
So it it's just an exciting appointment. I think revolution in many respects is the right word for what's happening at Millwall this week. I think we're moving away from the traditional manager runs everything to
yeah.
Joe Edwards is just coaching the team, getting the
He's head coach.
yeah.
Yeah,
Obviously, he'll probably have an input into the youths and the way that they play, the way that the under 23s play. But the day-to-day detail, that's not in his remit.
no, that's going to be given to the likes of Aldrich,
Yeah,
Kavanagh,
yeah, they're going to
Billy
spread it out.
Taylor.
Yeah, I think that
They've gone. They went to some. They've gone to some lengths. I suppose that's one of the questions that arose with these titles. A bit quite clear in this distinction between being head coach and manager in the traditional sense. Now we've come a long way from the days of Charlie Hewitt, where he was like a single-handed kind of Mr. Millwall kind of idea. And as you say, the game has evolved
we
into
ran the whole
now.
club. Yeah, but he ran.
He ran the whole club, yeah, answering letters and all sorts of stuff. It was that's how it used to
Yeah,
be.
we paid people and everything. He basically was a manager of a football team. The trainer did the coaching, but he did
Yeah,
everything else. He was the chief executive, the marketing manager, the the souvenir guy, the guy that organised the catering, and the referee for the weekend. He
yeah.
oversaw everything. But now Joe Edwards is just going to purely be
Head
focusing on the coach.
Yeah, head coach. There's an interesting interview actually with Zian Fleming, who speaks English better than a lot of English people, Neil. Actually, when you listen to
Quite
Zian,
often do, don't they, Rick? Yeah, only foreigners grasp of the English language. Certainly better than mine and Harry's.
well, my Dutch is not up to par. I'll tell you that much. But anyway, he was speaking about the system abroad. Obviously, he's come from the Dutch school of football, and there it's quite normal for there to be a head coach who, as I understand it, is how Joe Edwards is going to work at the Den, focus purely on footballing matters. I'm going to guess that Joe may have, if he wants a player, he's going to let the likes of Alex Aldrich know and whoever. I would like X, or he may just say something as much as I would like a certain type of player. Neil, go find me a Dutch midfielder who can goes past people like they're not there. That kind of idea. So I think it's the division of responsibilities can be purely focused on football. Clearly, it seems to be his talent. There's been a few photography and video shots of the players training this week, and you can't tell much from that. But it does look like it's looks like a happier a happier place perhaps than it's been in recent times. Obviously, the proof of the pudding will come at Hillsborough on Saturday. The first game, 1,500 going up there on Saturday. So it's clearly electrified the Mill support, Neil. Given that it's not been a great season so far, I'd take 1,500 up to one of the great grounds, Sheffield Wednesday. But with this added buzz of the beginning of a new Millwall, new revolution, I think it's really exciting times. I feel quite buzzed at the end of this week.
Yeah, Alex Aldridge actually addressed the issue of will Joe Edwards have a say in transfers in the Southampton press this week. He said, if you take recruitment as an example, then that will be myself, the recruitment department. I didn't even know we had a recruitment department.
No, who knew? Who knew?
I thought it was you and you and football manager. But sorry,
as long as it's not Lurch.
it's probably about the only thing he doesn't do. Joe and the coaching staff working absolutely hand in hand to find players that will make us better. There are clubs that operate where they sign players and the head coach gets on with it. I don't think that works. Likewise, I don't think it works when a manager has a complete say over everything, signs a player, and the club just have to get on with it. And then they pick up the pieces if it goes wrong. There is a happy medium that certainly in the Championship the majority operate with, and we're no different. I think that's quite refreshing, actually. There's nothing worse than if you support a club and the manager's brought in a whole load of his own players. I know we've had it to a certain extent, but with Gary Rowett, but I think a lot of those players have left, haven't they? I know that he brought.
There's a churn, isn't there? I mean, I'm thinking some of the players we've seen, and even
George
this week,
Evans would have been one. I think
Michael Keefton Bell. Do you remember him? I mean, he was like one of those brief cameo.
To a certain extent, he worked with him, and I think there was a couple of Ryan Woods from Stoke. So it's dangerous where you give the manager the whole power and then he brings in all of his players. Then for whatever reason it doesn't work out and you get rid of him. And you're left with those players. I don't see that at Millwall.
No, the impression I've gained from listening, and there was a second Joe Edwards into. There's the main one at the start of the week. There's a second one on Millwall TV, which is subscription listeners. We'll come back to that in a second, actually. So I think it links in with something that Steve Kavanagh says later on, which will in his kind of State of the Union address made to us all. But I mean, I think the expectation of Joe Edwards with the existing squad is that more is going to be looked for from the existing squad. So you've got to play at the likes of Casper De Noor, Zian, and one or two others, I dare say, that are going to be asked to retain the ball, hold it further forwards, take the pressure off the defence was one of the phrases that Joe used. Because obviously, as we've seen in recent games, if you keep letting quality sides come at you, you finish up conceding. Now, you know, it's a very hard job to resist for 90 plus minutes, 95, 98 minutes, whatever it can be now. So clearly it's going to be players in our current squad that he sees as having the capability to do a lot better. And that's interesting because I think he's going to set quite a high bar, actually. I think the expectations are going to go up for some of these players, some of the likes of Zian and the ones with the talent that I think Edward sees as having the capability to do better. I think they're going to have to start to indeed do better. And I think that's going to be a good thing for them. It'll be a good thing for us. Certainly if we can hold the ball further down the pitch, Neil, it's going to mean that dear old Murray's going to have the time to take a breath before he's back trying to deal with the latest wonder kid from Southampton's youth academy or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah, I think there was another phrase that Joe Edwards used, which I think we've all got to be mindful of. Change won't happen overnight.
Patience is the attribute you refer to, Mr. Fissler.
Which is something that we don't do well. And I guarantee that if Sheffield Wednesday score in the first minute tomorrow, everybody will be on Hoff, everybody will be on Twitter demanding a Joe Edwards sack.
I sincerely, genuinely, with all my heart, hope that Millwall fans will be better than that. I mean, you know, I was quite surprised. We did a show the other day, Neil, didn't we? The kind of Welcome Joe Edwards, I think I called it. But there was quite a few voicemails one way and the other on this and the other show that I did, where there was quite a lot of negativity towards the appointment. And I struggle with that. I mean, I think you said it right, that it'd be lovely to be a little bit positive about the way the club's going, and that will take time. It's going to take patience. You can't just turn us into, Zizou's Galactico side overnight with the remnants of a League One defence and players that have come to us through the Gary Rowett school. So,
yeah, but number one dissenting voice isn't with us this morning, young H. And I did find it deflating. I came off that call on Monday and I was excited before going on. And then all of a sudden you listen to... it was what we said before we went on air, actually. We were having a discussion about how other people can subliminally change your opinion or form your opinion by listening to others. And it was kind of that, the negativity surrounding Joe Edwards. I'm not digging H out, but because there were others on those voicemails, as you said. But let's give the guy a chance, yeah? I think everything that I've heard this week says that you can't obviously say it's going to be a brilliant appointment, but your gut feeling is it's going to be a decent appointment. So let's give the guy a chance. Yeah, we have to be patient, yeah? The defence, as you quite rightly point out, is a League One defence.
Mm.
We've got a goalkeeper who isn't as mobile as he should be because
And age is catching up with Bart. He's still got a world class save to order, but he's got like us all. I mean, everyone's got an error in them, Neil.
And
that becomes.
I think we have to be patient. We have to give him this transfer window and the summer transfer window to maybe sort out what he wants, and to get the defence in order. Because let's be honest, going forward, our midfield is pretty good.
It is.
Our attack is pretty good, and I feel that when he says he wants to create numerous chances, that's one thing that Nisbet has been missing.
Did you pick up on the way he said he watched quite a bit of football, Millwall football?
Yes.
We're talking about, listeners. Which I thought was to his credit. Clearly he knew his subject. So now that may be prep for an interview, but he's clearly done his homework, and that reassures me because plenty don't in this life. Create chance creation and take the pressure off the defence. They were the two main areas. Well, yeah, I mean that's music to my ears, Neil. And I hope
Nisbet's ears as well because he's been wandering around in most games, either alongside Bradshaw or without Bradshaw, wondering what do I have to do to get a bloody chance at this club. Yeah.
I went to Asda's Beckton branch yesterday. There was a chap wandering around a car park looking like Nisbet. Actually, he was kind of wandering around looking lost, shouting at the clouds.
Achtung, Millwall.
How long has it been like that? That our strikers have to create their own chances. They don't get many made for them. Because that was the way that we played our football. Now, when he's saying I want us to create numerous chances, well, then the law of averages are that he's going to take one or two of those.
Yeah.
Hopefully Bradshaw takes one or two of those, and hopefully
it's happy days because one or two chances taken would have made a big difference to our last two results, Neil.
They would have done. Yeah, they would have done. All season, really. Yeah, well, in a lot of the games that we've lost or even drawn, chances were at a premium, and it's just something that it's just happened for too long down at Millwall.
No, I'd say get behind him. I mean, what's the alternative, listeners? I mean, we could have had some old sweat that's come in, someone
Jones bloody preaching to us about the Bible.
Could have done without that. That's for sure. I mean, there were no truly exciting names. There were journeyman managers that maybe could have done a job, maybe got us up the table a bit, maybe. I think one thing we've said it before. I'm going to say it again, listeners. I make no apology. One thing that's really always stood out whenever you take any kind of look at the history of our football club from the earliest days is we've actually been ambitious. Now, it's not always worked for us. Sometimes it's blown up in our face. This might blow up in our face. It might not work. But as someone said online, if you don't roll the dice, you don't win at the table, do you? So we go to watch Millwall nil to be entertained and hopefully leave the Den with a win, but a win that's gives us a buzz. And that's what's been missing now for some years at the Den. I generally can't see how anyone can really dispute the throw of the dice here. It may not work out, but that's football. You don't win every game, do you?
The only other throw of the dice I would have taken was I was in the camp of Emma Hayes, apparently, according to you, Nick, as I'm woke. And I was devastated to see that, to see that she's gone to the USA, especially when it was announced that she was leaving before Millwall had appointed Joe Ed.
And she's also earning the same money. This was in. I get the Athletic newsletter. I don't never read it, but they always get the headlines of the Athletic, and she's earning the same money as the US national men's team coach out there. So she's on the same dough out there, which. I suppose the market is increasing, especially in the USA for women's football.
But we diverse with a little.
We do digress. The other video I wanted to mention just briefly, Neil, is the Jimmy Berylson video that was shorter. It was about 13 minutes. Another interview with Max. Well done, Max. It's not easy, Neil, to interview and do it well. And I thought he did a good job for both of those interviews because they're two major club interviews, and I thought he pulled them off well, Max. But the James Berylson interview is a good one.
If there's some piece of advice I could give Max, is make your questions shorter, mate. Don't almost answer your own question.
Right.
But you come to James Berylson, Jimmy. It's unusual to hear one of the Berylson family speak, wasn't it? I know that we mentioned
he spoke well. Yeah, we never really heard that much from John, really, did we?
No, I think the club were. My impression was the club were slightly worried what he might come out with.
He was a character. I never spoke to John.
I think
once
the way it was, and I don't think that would probably have fitted in with. But to be honest, it was just great to hear. I know we said it on Monday, we need Jimmy Berylson to come out. I know he stopped short of saying what his vision for the club was, but there were one or two things that struck me about that interview was he used the word long-term a lot.
I picked up on that. Yeah.
It was almost a buzzword.
Yep.
He wanted to reassure people that the family were in this for the long term, and he used family. He related Millwall to being part of his family, and that they were in it for the long term. And quite interestingly, he said that Millwall started out as an investment for John, but very quickly became an obsession and the greatest love of his life, apart from his family.
That struck me. That's quite something to say, Neil.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's probably how we all feel about Millwall to a certain extent. I know that we get the hump, but then again, you get the hump with your family, don't you? That's the obvious. Yeah, but you get a bit lemon with them every now and again.
That's why we go to Millwall, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
I suppose it is. I haven't thought of it in that way. I suppose when I was 12 years old and I crossed the threshold in Coldblow Lane, I was making an investment because it was a fair old chunk of what little pocket money I had to spend. So it was a fair investment from a 12-year-old's point of view. Stick plenty of zeros on it. And I suppose it's the same feeling for John Berylson because, I mean, none of the Berylson family were born into Millwall, were they? I mean, they come from Boston, so how could they? But I think the love, and he expressed it very well, actually. It's quite a touching interview with James. And I think that, as we learned over the years with John, his dad, that love was evident, but it's clear it's made an imprint on the rest of the family, and I think it's quite touching. I found it quite moving, actually.
Yeah, it was, and you could see that they were moved with the connection between John and the fans, and John and the community.
Yeah,
they mentioned the community a lot, and it wasn't just Millwall as a football club, but the whole community, the staff. It was. I don't think he seemed comfortable, and he was almost nervous at times, especially at the start of it. He was shuffling, and
he warmed into the interview, which is why. Just going back to Max, I mean, I think you're right about Max's questions. To shorten them, I think you're always going to be better. But what I thought Max did well, because James did start off with, he's clearly not used to having a camera pointed at him to speak in that way. But I thought Max did a good job of warming him into the interview, because that's also an art form, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it was. It was a very good. It was a good interview, and to be honest, yeah, no, you're right. The Joe Edwards interview was top notch.
I thought Joe was a bit nervy at the start too, Neil. He's not been a profile manager. He's not a Jose Mourinho where he leads from the front. He's always been a backroom guy, and he seemed to warm to the role the interview rather, as it went along.
Yeah, but the good thing was, I think that with Joe, I think that he would have been given some media training, but he would have been largely have done most of his stuff in-house. And the good thing is that interview was in-house. So it's not quite as intense as having somebody like me, machine gunning questions at you, because I've got a story in my head.
Yeah.
And I ask you a question, then I'll probably ask you 4 follow-up questions.
Yeah. to feed off of these points. Yeah.
Something going back to Jimmy's interview, he stumbled over 1 point, and it was something that I picked up on.
Right.
I'm wondering if the departure of Mr. Rowett wasn't quite as mutual as they are letting on. He kind of intimated that change was right, that it was the right time for a change, almost as if they had it in their minds to make the change.
Well, I wondered that, and a couple of things occurred to me with that.
Forget the part of the interview; it was quite early on.
Yeah,
and I listened to it, and I thought to myself, "Oh, you've just corrected yourself there."
Well, I think if you looking at the club from purely as an owner's point of view, because we've covered the emotional side of football. It's also a business, and James Berylson is also ultimately the man that writes the check metaphorically writes the check that underpins it all. So, what's he seen since he's taken over this season? He's seen a couple of full houses, which is a rarity in Millwall history, which have both gone to waste. He's seen a hugely emotional day with a tribute to his dad, and would have seen the outpouring of love and all the rest of it. But he's also seen a full stadium, and then he's seen football that was not matching the potential of what he's got in front of him. So I think that probably that hard conversation, Neil, would have been something along the lines of, we need to change to keep this going on a regular basis, and you're only going to do that with winning football, but attractive, attacking football, the kind that you would see on his TV screens in America, from England and other countries. So maybe if that conversation with Gary Rowett, who is what I would call a fairly traditionalist defensive manager from a certain school of football, where you're not there to be entertained, boy, you're there to get a win and go home grateful for your 1-0 win, kind of old-fashioned I don't know, Don Revie type of idea, if you want. It's one that occurs to me. But if James has sat down and said we need to change to something a little bit more, I don't know, trying to think of an example, an Angie Postecoglou type of approach, and Gary Rowett probably would say, that's not for me, boss. And maybe there starts the parting of the ways. I don't know. That's all pure speculation, listeners, and I'm very good at pure speculation.
He used another phrase he used quite a lot was the next level.
Yeah, next level.
He mentioned the next level. He mentioned that 3, 4, 5 times, and I'm just wondering if they soon came to the realisation that Gary Rowett wasn't the man to take them to the next level, and that he'd in fact hit a ceiling. Yeah, and
I think that's apparent. I mean, James has been in place since his dad died, and then he's obviously had the fallout of the funeral and everything else.
Club. He's been around the club. It's not like he's
no. But he would have had his eyes and ears open then.
A long-lost member of the family that suddenly.
No. He would have soaked it all up
into it. He's been in and around the club. Well, obviously as a director, not with any great say, but he would have seen it.
It's a refreshing. Given that he's only been in the job for a fairly short space of time, a few months, he would have seen the football that's been played. He would have seen the way it's all going. And then there's been a parting of the ways by whatever method. I think it probably was in everyone's interest for it to at least be publicly
Yeah, I think H was right.
affable.
Yeah, I think that H was right, actually, in the long term, that Rowett had hit the ceiling.
Oh, very much,
and that we needed to go on. Now then, it's interesting to see that they obviously think that Joe Edwards is the man to take them to the next level, which is an awful lot of pressure to put on a first team or first time head coach.
But I was listening. I mean, obviously Edwards is going to be his own man, but when you consider the situations and the managers that he's worked with at Chelsea, and I suppose at Everton as well, I mean, it's easy to take the piss out of Lampard, but they're pressurised. They're working in pressurised situations. So whatever the outcome of the manager you're working with, he seems like the kind of guy that's going to look, listen, and absorb what's going on around him. So pressure is, yes, of course, but then that's football. Any of the upper levels, it brings pressure with it. You don't get into it unless you relish that. But I do think that he's clearly worked with some top names, and that can only be to our benefit as a club. I mean, I can't think of any manager we've had that's come to us with quite the same, if not proven pedigree in playing, managing wise, but certainly the same connection wise. I mean, I can't think of anyone new. I don't know if you can, but
George would have had, to a certain extent, he would have.
Jules Graham.
He would have played under Venables, Doherty.
Yeah, he would have had links playing wise.
Not to have almost had Mourinho on speed dial.
No.
Thomas Tuchel. Yeah. One of your Facebook friends.
Must be quite a contact list. I'd love to see his contact list, wouldn't you? Anyway, we'll never get
to have Frank Lampard. I know but these are proven winners in many respects. Lampard was a winner as a player.
As a player, yeah, that's right.
He did an adequate job at Derby, but I think that was helped out with the fact that he was loaned the likes of Mason Mount and people like that.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that Joe Edwards has actually brought Andy Myers in with him, who was Chelsea's lone technical manager. Yeah. So there's a link between the new Chelsea. I know that Joe Edwards was there. I'd actually forgotten that he was there at the end of last season when Lampard had that short spell in charge.
Yeah, he came back, didn't he? Came back, yeah.
Yeah, towards the end of the season when they got rid of, was it Tuchel, I think?
Yeah.
So hopefully he can go on to the old Pals Act in January and try and find us one or two little gems that would help us out.
Maybe a little gem from Thomas Tuchel's Bayern Munich, who aren't doing too badly in Germany at the moment. That would be
maybe Harry fancies a couple of months over it.
So, all good stuff. I'm genuinely excited, listeners. I hope you are too. I think it would be great to get back to some feeling of positivity at the Den. It's always easy to look at the downside of everything, and I think as a fan base, sometimes we have a tendency to look at the down side of anything, and I get why. I've been going since 72.
The negative, I think, at Millwall too.
But it's wearing, Neil, and I would love for us to let's get a result on Saturday. Let's start the new Edwards revolution, but let's not expect too much too soon. Just want to come on, if I may, Neil, to Steve Kavanagh's missive, like a papal kind of message address. Written.
Yeah, it's almost like the King's Christmas message, isn't it?
It's written in the language of an accountant, listeners. But if I've got a tip for Steve, you've already given Max a tip. My tip for Steve, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, Neil. You've written for the top papers. Really is the word in situ. very well placed. If you say somebody is in position, then there's probably a much clearer way. But anyway, just one little.
I think it's
It's an accountant's.
yeah, I think it's management speak, isn't it? What it really needed was it needed
In situ, I like that
through
word.
it and put it into English.
It could have been halved. It could have been halved and got your points across. But anyway, a few bits I've picked out from to save you reading it, listeners, if you don't want to read it. A few thank yous, obviously, to Gary Rower. Adam Barrett's been thanked. I just wanted to touch on Barrett, if we can, for a moment, Neil, because he's clearly quite well thought of. And I noticed Joe Edwards went out of his way to, to support Adam Barrett. He's still part of the staff there. Which is, some might find surprising, but I think it's this link to the squad. It's retaining a familiar face to some level. How do you see the retention of Adam Barrett? Rather than having a complete clear out, you keep some element of the old order still in place, I suppose.
Yeah, but there weren't many to get rid of, were there? I think
he's got a shot of Robinson. Paul Robinson.
I think it's going to be another tight knit group, isn't it? I think you're going to see transition coaches and set piece coaches and this coach and that coach and the other coach. You're not going to have a throw-in coach and all kinds of stuff at Millwall. I think that you're going to have...
Lurch's job as cook is still it's still safe.
Yeah, but I think you're going to find. But I think you're going to find it's just going to be Joe Edwards, Myers.
And AB,
and Andy Marshall, and
he's still there.
Yeah, well, maybe they may. Yeah, well, maybe they might bring Lurch in as some kind of transition coach or some kind of attacking coach.
Poor old Lurch. I'm sure he's a nice bloke, but he's become this kind of.
I think that to come back to the original point. I think he's highly well thought of at the club, and it was something we were talking about having your opinions of people almost moulded by the thoughts of others, and I think that probably mine to Barrett to a certain extent of he's been around for such a long time, and. What does he do here? But they obviously like him at the club. They rate him. Well thought of. The chairman spoke very high.
Yeah, James Berylson made a point of mentioning him.
Joe Edwards mentions him. I think Alex Aldridge mentions him a lot. Kavanagh mentions him a lot. So he's probably got something about him. And one thing I will say about Adam Barrett is I thought the football was a lot better under him.
It's made a start, hasn't it? It was an attempt to change it.
Yeah, you saw it wasn't quite as dull and as boring as it was under Rowett. At least it was watchable. But as you say, he made an attempt to make us more of an attacking team.
Yeah.
And less defensive. So I think it's but it's what it is. He's staying. Great, fantastic. It means we don't have to pay him off. Honest, I think, at Millwall, isn't it? But let's just see what it brings.
Absolutely. So he also thanks Paul Robinson, the Brummie Paul Robinson, who left us this week, as we've mentioned. It's a fairly extensive statement. It goes on then to touch on wider football issues. The government in the King's Speech this week has confirmed it will bring in the terms of the Tracy Crouch report, which primarily, in terms of impact on the game, is going to bring in the idea of a football regulator, but it also imposes financial restrictions on how clubs can. It's to try and prevent clubs from outstripping with wages, chasing the dream, as the old phrase used to have it. So it's going to be
the Championship, because there's a lot of clubs in the Championship. To a certain extent, I think we're one of them. I know we spend more than we bring in.
Well, Kavanagh says that we are actually not far off of where the new regime, as it will be imposed, and I think both Labour and Tory have committed to this. So the government however long it lasts will be, certainly it looks like Labour will also come with the same proposal. So you're going to get it one way or the other in the game. But Kavanagh makes the point that we're not far off of where the new regime would impose us to be, if that makes any kind of sense, listeners. So, which is interesting. But he then goes on.
I think there'll have to be some latitude, because you can't say, right, you have to be here. You have to give a certain amount of give and take, because it isn't always possible.
I'd imagine. Yeah,
We're
I'd imagine.
We're not chasing the dream, making
No,
these
no.
losses. We're just treading water.
Well, that's kind of the point of some parts of Kavanagh's statement, Neil, because as you say, you know, we're not chasing the dream in that spend type of sense. So he then goes on to touch on the need to make more money, and that's a paraphrase. He puts it a different way. I can't remember how he put it now.
Well, that's obvious, isn't it? We need to make more money.
We need to make more money, and just to go back, I mean, it's a very petty thing to put the new manager's video behind a paywall, but I think it comes from this pressure that all of the departments of the club are under now to try to maximise their revenues to justify their team and their existence and all the rest of it. They changed it, so fair play, we've touched on that, but I think it comes from that initial direction that they want subscriptions to their Millwall TV service, which is a £5 a month, listeners. And I've actually been thinking a lot about the subscriptions model, and I actually put £5 into the Southwark News because I had some content I wanted to look at the other day. And for a £5 a month for the Millwall TV service, you get actually quite good extended highlights after a game, which is quite useful when you set yourself up as an amateur hour podcaster, because it's quite nice to be able to see the game. You can get the full replay of the match, which I don't particularly want to see again, but the extended highlights are pretty good. So for what you're paying, my point being that you're going to get something back for it, and I think there's a pressure on all of the teams at the club, including the football side. Now, one thing that Kavanagh makes the point is that Joe Edwards has signed on to this, as he put it, and signed up to this. So I'm going to guess that we're going to be a bit more canny with our transfer dealings, which will be the other side of Alex Aldridge's wheeling and dealing.
We have to be. We've said it for years. We've sold players too cheap.
Yeah.
We've not recruited well.
No, we haven't. And we haven't sold right either.
No, but we have started. Whatever people can say about young Older, and I call him young Older because he's considerably younger than me, and I've known him since, it seems, for many, many, many years now. We're moving in the right direction. We're buying well. Yeah, we're buying at the right price. We didn't accept the first offer that came in for Zian Fleming.
No, we didn't. No, that's right.
And that was probably to the detriment of the first 6-7 weeks of the season, because he was appalling.
Yeah.
He was awful. That's not put, but he's got his head right now, and he appears to be the Zian Fleming that we loved last season. And we've said it numerous times that now we have to be canny on when we sell him. We have to,
which is selling at the right time, and that's the way I read that
at
piece.
The right
then
price.
Yeah, at the right price.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that they're trying to get their house in, and it's good because we are playing catch up. We are off a standing start. For too often, Millwall has just meandered along like Millwall.
Yeah,
haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are so many opportunities now, and you have to be more professional in the way that you run things.
Which he touches on, and there's linked to Fanatics. It's a massive thing, Fanatics. Anyway, he refers to there being problems, and there have been problems. People posted on X,
but there doesn't seem to have been any progress from the problems. I'd be interested to know what people think.
You tell us, listeners. I mean, Kavanagh refers to the problems with Fanatics, and he also touches on the fact that the club and Fanatics have been working with new personnel. Apparently, there's some names and changes behind the scenes at the club to try and work this out, and I'd be interested to know how that's working out. I haven't bought anything from the club shop nor from Fanatics, so I don't honestly know. But the expectation or the implied expectation is that the problems will decrease considerably. You'll never get a perfect, no retailer is perfect, but it should reduce considerably. That's the way that I read.
Yeah, but it should have reduced. I don't know about it should reduce. They should have reduced.
Should have, yeah.
Their arses in gear by now.
You tell us, listeners, tell us your experience with the club shop and Fanatics. It's easy to make fun of it, but it's actually a really important revenue stream,
Yeah, but it really is. When you're getting, I don't know how many hundreds of foreign tourists that we attract.
It's really striking where I sit, Neil. I've mentioned it many times, how many foreigners are sitting there. Yeah.
And I've mentioned it before. They are ripe for pilfering. Yeah. Their wallets have almost got take me written.
Well, they've come to London for a holiday, and Millwall has a name. It may have gained that name by various methods over the years, but it's got a name, Neil.
Isn't it? Whereas we used to have a programme as a memory.
Yeah.
And you still pull out a programme now and you think, oh, yeah, no, I remember that game.
Name recognition is the key of advertising. I mean,
they will buy a shirt or a scarf or a T-shirt or something to remember their day at Millwall. And you can't relieve them of that cash if you haven't got the product. Everything around the ground, the match day experience, as we mentioned so many times, the food, the beers, that kind of thing, it's improved, it's got better, the entertainment. But we're striving. I just wonder if we're making... it just frustrates me because I'm still of the belief that we weren't ready for the Premier League. And I wonder if we really wanted to win promotion.
Last year, you mean? Yeah.
Because we knew we weren't ready. We aren't ready. It would have been embarrassing, our off-the-field operation. We're not there. We're nowhere near there.
No.
It seems that every time we get somebody good in, they last about 6 months or a year, and then they're off again.
Some new names, new director of finance, one or two other names, behind the scenes stuff, listeners. So nothing that's going to impact us other than hopefully an improved service from the club shop and also Fanatics for their online operation, which is key because, one thing before we close the show out today, Neil mentioned the global nature of the game. It's, our sport is a global product now. Everyone watches it around the world. It's quite interesting, actually. We'll touch on it before we close out today, but that fact is not going to change, and there's no going back to the past. He also mentions the Wigan FA charges, which we've touched on. I don't want to go all over that all again, but whether we like it or not, the world has moved now onto we're nearly in 2024. It's a different world to 1984, 74 when I started going. We have to move at a time.
Yeah, he makes that point. He does make that point, and he's right. Yeah.
He is right. Like it or not, he's right. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what I was going to... I was going to... You took the words right out of my mouth. We have to move with the times. We can't be... As much as I hate it, we can't be on PC and we can't do the things. We can't get away with it. You saw what happened with Luton last week, how they were hung out to dry because of this so-called tragedy chanting.
They will hang out the smaller club, and they don't come much tastier than Millwall to be hung out to dry, Neil, do they? So,
and that's what happened over this Wigan stuff.
Yeah.
From what I can see, it was 6 of one, half a dozen of another. It was provoked. We don't have to act as football's policeman, football's conscience. Yeah,
it's a good way to put it. I think.
Yeah, the world has moved on. The next one is you take it up the arse when somebody
That's going to come. We're going to come a cropper on that, but we've got to find other ways to support the club. I mean,
It's meant
some of them,
humour. It is.
I can picture the responses to this, Neil. I can picture it all now, but it's a fact of life, and you might not like it, listeners. Some might wish it was still 1974, and that's fine. But we're here, whether we like it or not, and something's got to change because we all want the same thing, which is the well-being of our club, Millwall.
Yeah, I think that they do stand behind us at times. They criticise us at the wrong times, I think. But I think we have to accept that we have to behave a little bit differently.
Find different ways, yeah. Let's not that stupid song about how shit must you be, we're winning away. Let's not be doing that anymore. I just hate that song. That's nothing to do with anything. I thought I'd just include that along the way, Neil.
The thing is that Millwall haven't gone down the identical fan avenue. That we can still have our own identity. We don't have to sing the generic LA nonsense.
The Football League we go, which is what I was doing the poppy at the Southampton. I thought, Jesus, I'm so happy we don't sing all that, Tosh. You know?
Yeah, we'll never play you again, and all of that.
Yeah. And all that was Charlton, wasn't it?
Yeah, and all of the other songs that every other club sings. Millwall aren't like that. We have got our own identity. We can keep our own identity. We just need to lose one or two of the
rough edges,
the more Millwall ways.
Let's talk about some seasons to remember, Neil. We're coming to the close of the conversation now. We've been going for an hour, listeners. Wow. Neil, you've been a busy boy. You've been putting out some really nice looking accounts of the 64-65 season, a favourite of mine, 75-76 and 87-88. All available on Merv's victorpublishing.co.uk site. These look fantastic piece of work, mate. I just want to say well done to you for doing that.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Funnily enough, we've got some more to come.
More
lucky people. I tell you what, Millwall might not be in a position to relieve you your Christmas cash, but Neil certain
Fissler is.
Yeah, well, Fissler and Merv certainly are. No, what we've done, what we're doing is I've written 1989-90.
Okay, the first division season, yeah.
The first division season.
Yeah.
And I'm also doing 84-85, which is almost done.
The George Graham season.
George Graham season.
Yeah.
These were just I had the idea about 10, 15 years ago and wrote, it's not only Millwall that I've done about 30 clubs. I've done 35 seasons because it was a business idea that I had many years ago and got promoted or took on more stuff at the Express to do with football, and they were kind of put on an external hard drive, as you do, and forgotten about. And I discovered them a few weeks ago. I said to Merv, do you think these would
they work? They're good.
And
Merv's stuff on his site is brilliant. Listeners, have a look at victorpublishing.co.uk. You can find Neil's latest works on there, which look really brilliant. We're going to do a podcast about these books.
Trying to wing some down to you, Nicholas.
Yes, and I'll have a little look at them.
Yeah, but it requires Mr. Bezos to pull his bloody finger out and actually get them down to you. But they are on the way, and once they're on the way,
we can sort something out next week, probably. Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to talking about all of those books, listeners. So 64-65, 1975-76, which is my favourite season. Then we've got 87-88, Neil, and as Neil said, others to come. So seasons to remember. Let's check those out on victorpublishing.co.uk. I'm also putting together my Achtung calendar, listeners. There's more news on that will come soon.
Oh, the Achtung calendar. I'll tell you what, the Achtung calendar is as Christmas as the John Lewis advert. Is
It is. I should do an advert for it, maybe a TikTok.
Yeah, there's actually more thought goes into the Achtung calendar.
I'm trying to have a theme, and this
Campaign that will.
well, this year's theme's going to be my choice, listeners, of players of the season since the move to the new stadium not new stadium, the Den in 1993.
That's a good thought, actually, Nick. I
So
was
there's.
wondering if you'd run out of ideas or.
That's good. I always tap Neil up for ideas, Neil. The listeners, when I run out of ideas, I go looking in the Fissler idea machine. But no, I came up with an original one, which is good for me. It's going to be players of the season. My choice of players of the season since 1993. But that's coming soon. More news on that when I actually have placed the order to get them printed. That will benefit the Lions Food Hub as ever, as the show does, the advertising. I just wanted to close us. Two things, actually, to close us, Neil, if I can. My eye was caught, it's actually by Omar from that Millwall podcast. He mentioned the fixture from the past, the time we had to wear the Sheffield Wednesday away kit, which was in 2013. We must have fouled up our away kit in 2013.
Yeah, I think Wisdom put the wrong one on the. He's not the last person. It's happened. Can you remember? Did Coventry or somebody once wear Millwall's away kit in the early 70s?
There's a famous one from the 60s where Dave Mackay and Derby County had to wear the Millwall away shirt. There's a picture of Dave Mackay, a famous name in the game. Spurs and Derby.
What I'm thinking of. That is
Scotland. Yeah, and he's actually it's a great photo. I love it's one of those great images. He's got like a portrait photo on the picture at Coldblow Lane wearing a Millwall shirt, away shirt. But this one here is from 2013. It's great pictures. I mean, you forget these players. I had to dig out the team list because you forget these people are ever involved in our club. There's Scott McDonald there. It was a 2-2 draw, listeners. This is dated 24th of August 2013. So we've got Scotland, Stephen Bywater in goal. Sean Derry, Richard Chapman, Lee Martin.
If you blink, you actually miss Sean Derry's involvement at the.
He was only in for about 6 games. Didn't he become manager at Notts County? Did he go?
Yeah, somewhere like that. I think he went into coaching. I think somebody made him an offer he couldn't refuse, which was to our blessing, because I can't remember him doing anything.
No, I don't. He looked like he just rolled out of the hamburger bar round the back or something, you know. But no, you forget these names. Andy Keogh, there's Danny Ungessen coming on for Sean Derry in the 70th minute. This would have been under Lomas, I think, at that point. I think it was a Lomas. One of Lomas's better games, 2-2 draw. But also, just looking at the Sheffield Wednesday side there, Neil, I mean, there's David Prutton, who's gone on to have a semi-career as Sky TV's championship presenter, and another
presenter.
Of sorts. Also, Michel Antonio, who's now playing for West Ham, of course, in European football, as I saw him last night. But yeah, so there's just a shout out for that fixture. Good call there by Omar. I've forgotten the incident of the forgotten away kit.
Yeah, one of my favourite away days. It was always a lovely away day, Sheffield Wednesday.
It's a lovely ground, isn't it? It's one of the big grounds of the game. It's a wonderful place.
Yeah. And it was an easy place to get to. The train was fairly good. Fairly quick train up there from St Pancras.
Tram takes you out there from central Sheffield, doesn't it?
The tram. They also do a wonderful hot pork stuffing and apple bap in Sheffield, which is actually wonderful if you're a foodie.
Okay.
My abiding away memories of Sheffield Wednesday was we went up there and it got a bit silly on the tram on the way back. And a rookie policeman crying in our carriage. And that is a true story. We almost had to tell. Yeah, in fact, we did. We told this rookie policeman who was absolutely bricking it. Not to
That's going to must have been young boy, I'd imagine. Yeah.
They were not to be frightened that he was safe. He was with Millwall. What an away story that is! I tell you.
I've got nothing to match that. I was thinking of. I went to a midweek game up there, and it's a lovely place, as you say. I can't match crying policeman, listeners, but I do remember Maguire Guay. Do you remember him equalising in the last minute? I think it's on one of when I was doing the podcast because I remember we were 1-0 down. It was about 95 minutes, and Maguire Guay, who was later criticised by Holloway for being overweight, but I quite liked him. Thought he was a good finisher, and he scored a late equaliser up there, left you with that wonderful
from Everton or somewhere, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Didn't he get? I think he struggled with his weight. I think he never seemed to quite make it as far as he should have done.
Weight, Nick.
Let's move along. We'll leave it there. But that was my memory. I can't match crying policeman. Shout out to the club. They've apparently Green Day, a band that you might know, Neil. Green Day. Apparently they were playing a secret gig in London last night, and the front man, Billy Joe, he was wearing a Millwall scarf apparently. So there we are. We're going to get with the kids. Hang with the kids.
Yeah, your music's still shit, even if you were.
Cheers, mate. I quite like the hot new Stones sound with Lady Gaga. One last shout. Nice email from Martin June. I want to give you a big shout out there in Washington State in the USA. Nice part of the world. I like it out there. Lives in Gig Harbor, Washington State, near Seattle. He's a Millwall fan, expat obviously, but he listens to the show. Mentions Harry Cripp's testimonial in 1972. Apparently, he's got his wife is American, and but he's got his father-in-law done up in Millwall stuff. Hopefully bought well from the club shop over there in the USA. He gets in wearing Millwall stuff. So big shout out to Martin G, all the way from Gig Harbor in Washington State.
Gig Harbor, what a name of somewhere to live. Where do you live? I live in Gig.
I've been to that's a lovely part of the world actually. I went to the national park. I think it's called the Olympic National Park. It's fantastic out there. It just gives you a little glimpse, Neil, into the global nature. I mean, obviously, a lot of our listenership is our expatriate Millwall fans, but also there is a real, layer of fans that are interested in the game here. I mean, it comes back to what we've touched on in the show. We've got to make more of our ability to reach all parts of the world because that's the way the world is now, and it's just interesting when you get emails.
Absolutely, and it just reminds you how small the world actually is when you get people from Gig Harbor.
Gig Harbor, Seattle, Washington State. Do keep in wherever you are in this world. It's actually really, I find it fascinating because I'm still of an era where I still can't quite believe that we put a show out that is listened to in places like Gig Harbor. It still quite amazes me each time. So give us an email, achdungmillwall@gmail.com, and send us wherever you are.
Can you send us some pictures of Gig Harbor? I want to know what this.
There you go, Martin. You're listening, mate. Neil wants to know what Gig Harbor looks like. Let's get it on. Nice one. I think we've reached the end of a long agenda there. That's 1 hour and they're just short of 1 hour 15 minutes. I think it's time to wrap it up and go and have a cup of coffee and something to eat, I think. Neil, thank you for joining me, mate. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's flown by, and I do know the answer to your question.
Go on then. He's a most decorated Englishman in domestic foreign football. Never reached his potential for the English national side. He's from Liverpool, Real Madrid, Manchester City. Who is it, Neil?
And he never realised his potential as an annoying co-commentator. It's that awful. I detest any time he's co-commentating. I groan. And there's two people that make me groan. One is Robbie Savage.
Yeah.
The other one, I believe, is Steve McManaman.
Stevie Mac, you got him. If there was anyone hanging on that answer still after all of that leading opening question and then the diatribe at the end, I can't. Well, I don't know what you've been doing with your football life, but anyway, yes, Stephen Mac. That's from punditgames.co.uk. Get the quiz game. benefits the Lions Food Hub. Every so if you select the, I think it's the Achtung meal drop down, and the Lions Food Hub gets a little dropsy as a consequence.
Ideal Christmas presents with Christmas,
isn't it? Just as well as a selection of Neil Fissler's books. So that would be like a wonderful present.
Yeah, well, be lazy, buy the game, buy the books, buy the calendar.
No effort Christmas
sorted, Christmas sorted. You're welcome.
Big thank you, Neil. Speak to you soon, mate. All the best.
Thanks.
Arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.